Was Oda Nobunaga truly a demon king? Unveiling his bold reforms and ambitions. The thundering hooves of war horses echo across the misty plains of Owari province. A single rider emerges from the chaos, his silhouette cutting through the morning fog like a blade. Oda Nobunaga, a name that would forever transform the landscape of feudal Japan. Imagine a world where chaos reigned supreme. Japan in the mid-16th century was a fragmented battlefield, a complex web of rival clans and ambitious warlords, each fighting for supremacy. But among them, one figure would rise, not just as a military leader, but as a revolutionary who would shatter centuries of tradition and forge a new path for an entire nation. Known to some as the Demon Lord of Japan, Nobunaga was far more than a simple warlord. He was a visionary who saw beyond the narrow constraints of his time, a strategic genius who understood that true power lay not just in military might, but in radical transformation. The scene culminates in his dramatic demise and lasting legacy. Born in 1534 to the Oda clan, a relatively minor noble family in Owari province, Nobunaga's early life gave no immediate hint of the extraordinary destiny that awaited him. His father, Nobuhide, was a regional samurai struggling to maintain influence in a turbulent era. Young Nobunaga was initially seen as an unpromising heir, erratic, unconventional, and seemingly more interested in personal whims than strategic planning. Historical accounts paint a vivid picture of a young man who defied every expectation. During his father's funeral, while other clan members expected solemn mourning, Nobunaga reportedly caused a scandal by behaving irreverently, throwing incense at the altar and shocking the assembled mourners. This moment was more than mere rebellion. It was a declaration of his disdain for rigid social conventions that he would spend his life dismantling. The nickname Demon King, or Demon Lord, Mau, wasn't just a dramatic moniker, it was a complex reflection of his reputation. Some saw him as a demonic figure, ruthless and uncompromising. Others recognized him as a transformative force, too radical to be understood by his contemporaries. His rise to power was anything but predictable. In an era where most samurai leaders inherited power through careful diplomacy and traditional allegiances, Nobunaga seized control through a combination of strategic brilliance, psychological warfare, and an almost unprecedented willingness to break every established rule. The Battle of Okahazama in 1560 would become a legendary moment that would define his reputation. Facing a vastly larger army led by Imagawa Yoshimoto, Nobunaga did something no traditional military strategist would consider. He attacked during a summer storm, using the chaos and reduced visibility to his advantage. Imagine the scene. Rain pelting down, thunder masking the sound of approaching troops, the Imagawa army relaxed and unprepared. Nobunaga's smaller force moved like shadows, striking with such unexpected ferocity that Imagawa Yoshimoto was killed before he could even realize what was happening. In a single, audacious move, Nobunaga transformed from a regional warlord to a significant power broker in Japanese politics. But Nobunaga was not just a military strategist. He recognized the potential of new technologies, welcomed foreign influences, and was willing to challenge the deeply entrenched social hierarchies of feudal Japan. He was a social innovator who understood that true power required more than battlefield victories. While other clan leaders viewed firearms with suspicion, Nobunaga embraced them, understanding their potential to revolutionize warfare. He was among the first Japanese leaders to extensively use arquebus units, transforming military tactics and challenging the traditional dominance of mounted samurai warriors. Nobunaga embraced them, understanding their potential to revolutionize warfare. His approach to governance was equally revolutionary. In a society rigidly stratified by birth and social class, Nobunaga promoted individuals based on merit rather than lineage. He welcomed merchants, artisans, and even farmers into positions of influence if they demonstrated capability, a radical concept in a society built on strict hereditary distinctions. Yet, with every innovation came controversy. His methods were ruthless, his vision uncompromising. Religious institutions that challenged his authority, particularly Buddhist monasteries that had accumulated significant political power, were crushed without mercy. The burning of Mount Hie's monasteries and the massacre of its inhabitants became a stark symbol of his determination to eliminate any obstacle to his vision. Was he truly a demon king, or was he a misunderstood visionary? The line between these interpretations is as complex and nuanced as Nobunaga himself. As we delve deeper into his extraordinary life, we'll unravel the myth, explore the man behind the legend, and understand how one individual could set in motion changes that would reshape an entire nation. The whispers of change began to echo through the fractured landscape of feudal Japan. Nobunaga was not just a conqueror, he was an architect of transformation, reshaping the very foundations of a society locked in medieval constraints. His military campaigns were more than simple territorial expansion. Each battle was a calculated move in a complex chess game of political restructuring. The traditional samurai code of honor meant little to Nobunaga. He was interested in results, not romantic notions of warrior nobility. Take the siege of Inabayama Castle in 1567, a perfect example of his revolutionary approach. Where other commanders would have launched a traditional assault, Nobunaga deployed unprecedented tactics. He understood that psychological warfare could be more powerful than brute force. By cutting supply lines, isolating the castle, and systematically destroying the enemy's morale, he achieved victory with minimal bloodshed. But Nobunaga's true genius lay in his ability to see beyond immediate military objectives. He recognized that economic power was just as crucial as martial strength. Merchants and trade were not peripheral. They were central to his vision of a unified Japan. The emergence of Rakuichi Rakuza policies demonstrated this brilliance. By abolishing traditional trade monopolies and creating free markets, Nobunaga broke the economic stranglehold of established merchant guilds. This wasn't just an economic reform, it was a social revolution. Religious institutions were not immune to his transformative vision. The Buddhist monasteries, which had long wielded significant political and economic power, became prime targets. Mount Hie's massive monastic complex, once considered sacred and inviolable, was ruthlessly destroyed. His relationship with foreign influences was equally complex and forward-thinking. While many Japanese leaders viewed Christian missionaries and European traders with suspicion, Nobunaga saw opportunity. He welcomed Portuguese traders and Christian missionaries, not out of religious conviction, but as potential strategic allies and sources of technological innovation. His ultimate vision, a unified Japan under a single, strong central authority, was radical for its time. The fragmented feudal system, with its complex web of regional lords and competing interests, seemed impossible to overcome. But Nobunaga saw a different future. The path to revolution is often paved with blood, and Nobunaga's journey was no exception. As he stood at the precipice of transforming Japan, the very forces that made him a legend would ultimately seal his fate. The Honnoji incident of 1582 would become one of the most dramatic moments in Japanese historical mythology. On that fateful morning in Kyoto, Nobunaga found himself in a Buddhist temple, seemingly vulnerable and betrayed by one of his most trusted generals, Akechi Mitsuhide. Imagine the scene. The temple complex silent except for the crackling of approaching flames. Nobunaga, surrounded by a small contingent of loyal samurai, faced an impossible choice. Surrender was never an option for a man who had redefined the very concept of samurai honor. Legend says Nobunaga chose ritual suicide, seppuku, over capture, embodying the ultimate samurai virtue of dying with dignity. Some accounts suggest he deliberately set fire to the temple, choosing to burn rather than submit to his enemy. Whether historical fact or mythological embellishment, the story captures the essence of a man who would rather destroy everything than compromise his vision. Akechi Mitsuhide's betrayal was more than a personal vendetta. It represented the deep-seated resistance to Nobunaga's radical reforms. Traditional power structures, religious institutions, regional lords, established social hierarchies had been systematically dismantled by his relentless vision. But here's the remarkable twist. Nobunaga's death did not mark the end of his revolution. Instead, it became the catalyst for an even more dramatic transformation of Japan. His generals Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu would complete the unification process he had begun. Hideyoshi, a man who rose from peasant origins to become the most powerful ruler in Japan, directly implemented many of Nobunaga's innovative policies. Tokugawa Ieyasu would establish a shogunate that would rule Japan for over 250 years, building upon the foundations Nobunaga had laid. Historians continue to debate his legacy. Was he a visionary who laid the groundwork for Japan's eventual modernization, or a tyrant who used violence as his primary tool of transformation? The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. What remains undeniable is Nobunaga's fundamental impact. He didn't just change Japan, he reimagined what Japan could become. In a world of rigid traditions and inherited limitations, he proved that vision, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to transformation could reshape an entire civilization. If Nobunaga's extraordinary story has captivated you, this is just the beginning. Our channel delves deep into the hidden stories that shaped our world. Subscribe now, ring that notification bell, and join a community of history explorers uncovering the most incredible narratives ever told.